This hangout on air is live, and this is Sound Booth Theater Live. Thanks for joining, everybody. I'm happy to see Ronnie here on the stream with me. Wait, sorry.
Hey,
Am I supposed to call you RR like AA Ron?
that works too. Yeah, R Virdi. I don't really care. You know me personally, so
Okay. So yeah, the author of Goblin King, a LitRPG GameLit adventure Monster Slayer Online Book 1 is here with me. Why does it say chat is disabled for this live stream? That doesn't
I
make
have
sense.
no idea.
I'm gonna reload.
I can work in Google Chat, or is this YouTube
go.
chat you're talking about?
No,
Okay.
I'm talking about the YouTube chat. It works now. For some reason, it just wasn't working. Okay. So yeah, right. Did you already tell everybody on your Facebook what's going on here?
I'm about to link it right now. Like I said, my social media has been going crazy, especially after that comic deal thing.
Well, that's a good thing.
It is. It's just
Yeah.
I want people to shut up and leave me alone so I can talk about this book, which I'm partnering with you on.
Or they should just shut up and come to the show.
Yeah, that's why I'm going to send them the link right now.
Cool.
But every time I try to click on it, like another chat box appears, blocking. Okay. I literally have 19 PMs open right now.
Oh, wow. Those people need to get out of here and get to the YouTube chat if they want to talk. Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about this book?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So Goblin King was inspired by first. I'm huge into mythology. I'm a diehard mythos nerd. On top of that, I wanted to get into LitRPG because I grew up with the Monster Hunter game franchise and Dragon's Dogma. A lot of gamers already know what those franchises are, but they never blew up mainstream. They're not like Halo. They're not like the competitive shooters. They're definitely not like Morrowind and Elder Scrolls as a franchise. And I thought that would be the perfect thing to sort of emulate and come into the genre and allow me to get my mythology nerd out and sort of focus on creating different cool creatures and then have a high action combat based story. Because I love that both as a reader. I definitely read a lot of thrillers and I like my action. But also, I really revel games that have a beautiful combat system. Things like Nioh, Dark Souls, Devil May Cry. So it's sort of a blend of that. It's like if Devil May Cry met Monster Hunter World.
Wonderful. Yeah, and action is definitely what this book is all about. I think I've made it through the first 20% of the book reading myself. And yeah, it's just nonstop. So I think readers really like that, especially in this genre. Congratulations on your success for your first LitRPG release.
Oh yeah, thank you. It's been amazing. It's actually been the most successful book I've launched.
That's fantastic. And considering how much critical acclaim you've gotten for your urban fantasy and your now is Dangerous Ways. I haven't read it yet. Is Dangerous Ways is that urban fantasy as well, or is that straight ahead fantasy?
It's this weird fall between contemporary fantasy because it is set today, but the environment changes. It's not always set directly in New York. If you've read Neverwhere, it's a lot like that, where it does take place in these slip between realities. So it does have its moments in New York proper, Hell's Kitchen, New York City, Times Square, and then the rest of it takes place in the paranormal world that analogs ours. So it doesn't fit urban fantasy precisely, which is why it doesn't have a traditional urban fantasy cover. It's symbol-based.
Cool. Yeah. So, yeah, somewhere in between. I like that. I like it when books just sort of fit into these weird in-betweens, and I think that LitRPG in and of itself is sort of in that category perpetually, because it's always got that balance between sci-fi, which is how we actually get the game to work in the first place, and then we have the fantasy element, which is once you're in the game, all the characters that the players encounter.
Right, yeah. It's always this beautiful mix of it. The thing I like about LitRPG is that you do have, like you said, the fantastical world building once you've gotten into the game world, since so many archetypally follow fantasy layouts, but you have that beautiful inclusion of technology, simple things like how does your summon menu display? How does your item menu display? You have stats leveling and technological progress bars, depending on how you want to implement it. But they read a lot like a high fantasy culturally.
Sure. Yeah, and definitely, a lot of the lit RPGs include, hard sci-fi as to how it's possible to have this VR experience in the first place. So yeah, I like blending. I like being in that gray area between realms. And this one, Goblin King, definitely is that way. Now, the very beginning of the book is the prelude. It's kind of like it kind of reminds me of an anime, how it tells like a part of the story that happens later. Um,
Right.
just but it's like giving you a preview of what's to come, and then chapter one actually is the beginning of the story. And can you tell us a little bit about? We're not actually going to go through, I don't think, any of the IRL moments in this stream, but can you tell us a little bit about how Devrim actually gets into this world?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I knew the plausibility is a big thing for how these VR worlds work. So I wanted the background from its original world to be high enough in technology, but there needed to be a societal reason for why would this kid go into a game world there to be something where he can leave the world. I want to show off this world and make it a necessity to live there and level up. So in his world in the future, Earth, I took inspiration from the 100. Earth has already been irreparably damaged. People can't live there, so they're living on floating space stations. Technologically, we have all the abilities in the world to sustain life. They're not hurting in outer space for food, water, shelter, any kind of livelihood, medicine. What they do have a limitation, though, is physical space. So there's strict population put in place. And if you break that, what happens is instead of immediate execution, they rear the new children that were born without approval, essentially as slaves, because someone has to work and do all the menial labor while the society tries to support itself because it has limited space. At age 21, these children are normally executed when they reach final, what would be considered adulthood. So they get their labor out of them at least, then kill them off. And if any more children are born, which always happens, they become the next generation of slaves. So to save face, though, because that's such a horrible practice, a society finally develops a virtual simulation world where they can upload the consciousness of people. That way they can eliminate the air quote physical bodies of these kids. But it seems humane. Like, yeah, we're getting rid of these kids, but guess what? They get a second chance at this paradise digital world. They can live. They have all the physical room they need in this digital world. It's awesome. Except paradise always has a cost, and maybe it's not so awesome.
Right, right. We discover that relatively quickly as the adventure goes on in the virtual world, and yeah, in real life, it's just pure brutality from the beginning of the IRL part to the end. So, yeah, so I like the dark tone of this one, and I think I kind of feel like that's one of my specialties is the darkness, but. But we'll go ahead and jump into this. So we're gonna start with the prelude, and actually, I might be able to just run straight through the whole thing. Let's see, how much actual text is it? It's like the first 3% of the book. It's it's actually relatively long, but I think it'll be fun to get through just this prelude to give people a little. I feel like this prelude really does encapsulate the tone of the book pretty well. So we'll just do that. And I'm actually going to
Works
be
for me.
recording most of this. If you hear, let's see, I think we're only going to be encountering one other voice besides the main character in this one, and he's the actual namesake of the book. But make sure to stop me if you hear anything you don't like as far as character voices, and we'll work on it.
All right.
Cool. Oh wait, you did send me. Let me check out my drive real quick because you did fill
Yeah, you
out.
have the whole book.
Right, right. But you also filled out some notes just for me to check out as for reference for
Oh, name pronunciations. Yeah.
name pronunciation. Did you do any voice direction there?
I didn't because I was actually kind of curious to see what you would do because out of the few voice clips you've already sent me before, a lot of them hit really close to the natural voices I was thinking for this game because you especially have a really talent for younger people, I've noticed.
Okay.
And all of them are on the younger side. They're all close to their 20s, considering that's the cutoff for people to die and come into this world.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Oh, it's Kuftar.
Yeah, it's Persian. It's actually a Persian word for hyena. I didn't want to use kobold or something already done, so I figured if I use that, it sounded exotic, but it's it also fits the creatures pretty well.
There were Kuftar in the Dungeon Lord series, and I was pronouncing them Kaftar. So oops.
To be fair, it doesn't matter in that world either, I guess. I mean, it is a video game. I mean, tons of things have been pronounced weird in video games.
Okay. Here we go, guys. We're going to start on the prelude of Goblin King, a LitRPG / GameLit adventure Monster Slayer Online, Book 1. You LitRPG people and your giant titles. Okay. Prelude. Where it all went wrong. No one expects to die twice for their 21st birthday. Once in the real world, once digitally. 2 times too many, if you ask me. Devram Baines, Class Slayer. Pillars of smoke billowed from thatched roofs, spreading into clouds of charcoal to blot out the world's light. Bands of violent orange licked wooden homes and consumed fallen bodies. The tinge of fiery light washed away much of anything else in sight, leaving only nightmarish silhouettes of black, moving. The tinge of fiery light washed away much of anything else in sight, leaving only nightmarish silhouettes of black moving among. Okay.
Sorry, tongue twister.
No, it's just it switches. It's hard to explain. The tinge of fiery light washed away much of anything else in sight, leaving only nightmarish silhouettes of black moving among the flames with a singular purpose: death. An orange film seemed to stain the sky, muting the greenish blues of the world. The smear of hellish carmine from the fires didn't help. Devram's chest and lungs felt shrunken, tight from the acrid air. Is it? I always the word acrid or acrid. I always mix.
You said it right though.
Is it acrid?
Yeah.
Okay. Devram's chest and lungs felt shrunken, tight from the acrid air clinging to his insides like a burning adhesive. His throat constricted as he tried to breathe, and his limbs felt distant and unresponsive. He pushed away the fatigue, drawing on what little adrenaline he had left to clear his mind. The fog lifted long enough for him to focus. All right, so here we go with this is Devram's voice as he's thinking. So I wanted to there's this one young person's voice that I like to use a lot, but I'm gonna adjust it just a little bit because Devram, I feel like, is a little bit of a grittier character than most of the young people I voice.
It's exactly the reason I went with you for this, though, because I've noticed every time you read a book, you already have this inherent sense based on what you've read, like what the character sounds like.
Activate Slayer's resolve. The world flashed white for a blink of an eye before an electric, cold rush flooded his body, renewing his strength and clarity of thought. He felt as if he'd been shocked awake by a freezing shower. An arctic static charge coursed over his skin. Devram gripped the antiquated katana with both hands, flexing his fingers to steel himself. Thirst, his blade, quivered in his hand as if excited for the oncoming monsters. Did I say oncoming? Yeah, sort of. Thirst, his blade, quivered in his hand as if excited for the oncoming monsters. The crackling of failing wood and crumbling masonry deafened him to other sounds, but he shut his eyes for a split second, trying to take in what else he could. Metal clanked, ill cared for, sized improperly, and rattling constantly. Someone ran toward him. The sounds of heavy footfalls stomping over hard-packed ground, baked harder by the fire, graced his ears, and the noise of splintering wood under unforgiving boots followed. Sounds like one of them. He took a slow, calming breath and pivoted toward the oncoming creature. A figure clad in irregularly shaped armor leapt from a line of flames cutting through one of the dirt roads in the village. The creature's body was hunched, with gangly limbs that seemed oversized for its torso. Its features were a horrible cross between simian and reptilian, like a gibbon had mated with an iguana and taken on a bipedal form. Is it bipedal or bipedal? See, these words. There's too many.
Both are fine for me, but I mean, I've heard it bipedal, but I have heard
Both,
a
yeah.
few rare instances where people have said bipedal. So your discretion. I'll be honest, that doesn't bother me. I mean, I'm enjoying this. You nailed his voice the first time, though. It was still young, but it carried a bit of like this smoke and grit in it, which was perfect.
Good, good. Leathery, pale green skin took on a sicklier look under the firelight. The goblin's eyes seemed to pull in the brightness from the surrounding inferno, deepening in their intensity. Its crooked nose twitched, and its mouth spread into a feral grin, revealing countless serrated teeth. Devrim loosened his hold on the blade before gripping it harder again. Come on, come on. The goblin shuffled a few steps forward, its armor rattling like the only thing keeping it on the creature's body was the assortment of frayed leather straps and rusted buckles. The plating sported odd protrusions that served no purpose other than making the monster look larger and more intimidating than normal. The material seemed comprised of a blend of chitin and obsidian. Not a lot of openings in that mess. Devrim slid his feet forward, keeping his center of gravity low as he advanced. He turned to the side to limit how much of his body remained exposed. The loose robes and scant lacquered plating over his body wouldn't do much to protect him. It offered him superior mobility, and little else. The goblin threw its head back, releasing a whistling keen before lunging. It raised an arm to bring a spiked flail overhead. Wait till it closes the distance. My skill shot has limited range. His teeth grated against one another as he ignored the instinct to attack in favor of playing smart. The flail blurred into a metal dervish with the sole intent of caving his skull in, more likely pulping it. Devrim exhaled, counting his heartbeats to keep his mind on a singular track. The goblin had crossed within 5 feet of him. Now! The mental command he'd been holding at bay released, and he activated another one of his skill shots, Reverberating Strike. His body spread forward, and he reversed the blade in his grip, arcing the weapon upward in a diagonal blow. The cap of the hilt crashed home at the base of the monster's chin, lifting the goblin inches from the ground. A resounding smack echoed over the snapping of the fires. The goblin reeled in place like it had forgotten how to keep upright and balanced. It would remain stunned for a short period of time. Devrim resisted the urge to tear through his remaining skill shots to dispatch the creature, reserving them should there... Devrim resisted the urge to tear through his remaining skill shots to dispatch the creature, reserving them should the situation grow bleaker, which looked inevitable. He stepped forward, casting the blade in a horizontal strike at the paralyzed creature's face. The basic attack dragged a long gash along the goblin's forehead. He repeated the blow, bringing the blade across from cheek to cheek. The goblin staggered back, shaking its head free of the reverie it had been forced into. Its lips peeled back, viscous saliva hanging from its gums, forming connecting bands between the upper and lower portions of its mouth. The goblin convulsed, its eyes flashing garnet before it squatted. A rolling howl left its mouth as it rocketed into the air. A rolling howl left its mouth as it rocketed into the air, spinning the flail with renewed intensity. Crap. Devrim moved under an adrenaline-fueled panic, taking several long strides. His left arm exploded like endless shards of frozen glass had bitten into the flesh while being pummeled by a hammer. Ooh, ran out of breath there. His left arm exploded like endless shards of frozen glass had bitten into the flesh while being pummeled by a hammer. He stumbled to the side, losing his balance and toppling to the ground. Devrim winced through the pain. He hissed, coming short of breath as the world flashed a putrid, translucent green. The strobe faded before resurging. Yikes, that was weird. Strobe faded before resurging, racking his body with thousands of pricks that lasted a nanosecond. Poisoned! Damn it! The lost health was noticeable, but not detrimental. Yet. Devrim gnashed his teeth and slammed the base of his weapon to the ground, using it to help get to his feet. He rounded about in time to see the goblin swing the flail toward his midsection, his recent experiences tangling with the monsters won out, driving him to close the distance to put him chest to chest with the creature. The flail's chain lashed around his waist and sent the head slamming into his lower back. He snarled, letting the added pain fuel him, and ignored his diminishing health. Devrim used his position to capitalize on the gaps between the goblin's mismatched plating. He twisted, driving the chisel tip of the katana into one of the beast's exposed armpits. Devrim gave the monster no reprieve, jamming the blade in a frenzy into whatever openings he found. He worked the weapon like a sewing machine into the goblin's flesh. The monster's eyes lost their focus, and the bright... let's give that a little more space there. Okay, and that needs to be a little slower as well. He worked the weapon like a sewing machine into the goblin's flesh. The monster's eyes lost their focus, and the bright reds dulled into hollow burgundy as the creature fell to the ground. Devrim sighed, planting his blade into the ground to lean on it. Devrim sighed, planting his blade into the ground to lean on it. He ignored the prompt informing him he'd slayed the beast. Another counter updated below him. All right, and for the system messages, I think you wanted a female voice, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Do I have... let's use this one.
But if it is a pain, I'm not like dead set on it because I never actually enunciate in the novel what the voice is. I've left it neutral.
That's not a problem. I think you said it in the novel, actually. Just naming the track here and getting the proper effect. I wish you guys could hear the effects as I do them, but I'm pretty sure that's right. I've been working on the 1000 Revolution by Pippa da Costa, and so I've been narrating as an android female for half of each book. So this is going to be a piece of cake for me. Okay, let's see. D, room reverb. We want that all the way. No, that's speech. Yeah, okay, good. No reverb. All right, that looks set right. And our hotkey is 3. All right. Goblin slain count increased. He blotted the total from his mind, concerning himself with the deteriorating scenario around him. Devrim cast a look around the immediate area. Where's my party? He shot another glance around the village. Nothing. The world flashed again, leaving his muscles contracting in an electric seizure before dissipating. The poison's effect would linger for a while yet. He hadn't committed the exact duration to memory. Devrim put a hand to the side of his mouth and hollered, hoping his shouts would be answered. Nothing. Okay, so this is Gamma, right?
Yeah, the code.
Gamma! Gamma, where are you? Can you... Let's see. Do you have your headphones in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I think I'm hearing the YouTube video on your end. If you're watching...
Oh, you know what? That I'll mute my mic. That could be my mic. I have a Studio Blue mic and it's really close to me right now. It could be picking up the feedback from what you actually say through my headphones.
Oh, okay. So you're not watching the YouTube video at the same time?
I have it paused so I can address comments, but not I don't have it playing.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because I was worried about that.
He grimaced, pulling on the blade to help haul himself forward before wrenching the weapon free. They're still out there. They can't be gone. I didn't fuck this up that bad. I can't have. He trudged on, moving through the nearest open path into another of the village's small circles. Every one of the nearby small buildings had collapsed into heaps of burning rubble. Several structures had toppled toward one another, leaving no openings between them. A ring of fire engulfed the area. He spat, wincing through another sharp jolt from the poison. Watching his health diminish wouldn't help. He pushed it from his mind and gave the area a final look in case he'd missed something the first time around. The air caught in his throat as he spotted a figure. Let's give that a little more drama. The air caught in his throat as he spotted a figure that seemed to be woven out of darkness, cast within a set of flames at the other end of the circle. The shadow stood several feet above him, towering close to 10 feet. Shit! He wasn't supposed to be here. Devrim grimaced, brandishing his weapon. His body throbbed again from the poison. Damn it! The figure stepped out from the flames, a few rogue tendrils still licking across his armor. If it bothered him, he showed no signs. My voice faltered a little bit there. If it bothered him, he showed no signs. Devrim noted a lack of decreasing health. Is he immune to fire? The hell did he pull that off? The armored giant wore solid plating the color of dull charcoal. Each piece was oversized and reminded him of what an ancient samurai's might be like if it had been exaggerated and geared toward intimidation over practicality. Ran out of breath there. Each piece was oversized and reminded him of what an ancient samurai's might be like if it had been exaggerated and geared toward intimidation over practicality. He wore a crude helmet shaped like an elongated skull and painted the same grim black as the rest of his armor. Devrim couldn't make out his eyes, staring into the large holes on either side of the helmet only to see endless black. The darkness stared back at him. A crown of miniature blades ran along the top of the giant's helmet, seemingly fashioned into the piece itself rather than separate. A crown of miniature blades ran along the top of the giant's helmet, seemingly fashioned into the piece itself rather than separate. Devrim gripped his weapon in both hands, loosening and flexing his fingers over the hilt in anticipation as the figure neared. Goblin King. He let the words hang in the air. The Goblin King said nothing, drawing his war club from behind his back. The weapon was nearly his height, sporting silver studs along its burnt umber body. It looked like a baseball bat on steroids to him. Something blurred at the edge of his vision, prompting him to turn. Devrim spotted an NPC, non-player character, running out from behind one of the burning buildings. He hadn't seen anyone behave so mechanically within the world as of yet. It had to be a result of the imminent threat prompting a defensive response from the game world. I'm being picky, sorry guys. It had to be a result of the imminent threat prompting a defensive response from the game world. The guard was garbed in nothing more than hardened leather and ringmail, wielding a small, spiked mace. He shouted an incoherent battle cry and charged the Goblin King. And he's like pretty far away, right?
Yeah, he's like off in the distance, like you just see him at the corner of your vision.
All right, first of all, I haven't applied reverb yet. Let's see what we got. This is out. We're outside, so we'll do ping-pong delay. And then for Deed 2, we'll add some distance. Bring the reverb up. I wish you guys could sometime soon. you guys, I'm going to figure out how to have conversations with other people or have guest narrators while I'm still running OBS or Wirecast, so you guys can actually see what I'm doing here. Actually, I could screen share. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. All right, so this is my reverb switchboard here. I've already turned on the ping pong delay. Let's close that up. Now, this is dude 2, where I'm going to put this guard, and I'm going to increase the amount of reverb that's going to his channel so that he sounds further away, as well as lower his gain. Okay. Come on, men! Come, men of Hillside! We've got trouble to sort out. How do you want accents to go for NPCs? Do we want to go traditional UK accents because in this fantasy world?
That, and also the fact that I did kind of base them off that, it was kind of like a Monty Python thing in my mind. I had it running in the background, so you nailed it perfectly.
Devrim opened his mouth to warn the character away, shutting it just as fast. A cold calculation went through his mind. Maybe if enough of them spawn, they can whittle him down a bit. As if on cue, another guard materialized near the edge of the burning building. A third followed. Within seconds, half a dozen guards came to life, all armed with a variety of weapons. They broke into a roaring cry and charged behind the first guard. Don't do anything stupid. Sit, watch him, learn. He has to have some weakness. Devrim's theory went out of the window as the first guard closed in. The Goblin King twisted, swinging the Kanabo Club?
I always thought it was Kanabo, but I'm not an expert. It could be Kanabo.
Let me see.
I just know that's what it's called.
I'm looking it up. All right, there's a YouTube video.
You said it right, too, because there's no accent over any of the letters except for the O at the end.
All right, one more time. Yep, Kanabo. I'm hoping this guy was right. All right. The Goblin King twisted, swinging the Kanabo club in a single-handed strike to bat the NPC away with contemptuous ease. Devrim watched the guard's health plummet to a fraction of its total. Well, that's insightful. New strategy. Don't get hit. The Goblin King took a step forward toward the oncoming mass of guards and let the head of the club sink to the ground. As the first guard drew closer, he whipped it up, delivering the weapon to the base of the character's chin. That sounded weird. Characters. Not really. It was fine. The guard rose into the air before the Goblin King brought the club overhead. He slammed it into the NPC's back and drove him into the ground like a hammer on a nail. The character's health depleted completely. Devrim blinked as the Goblin King continued the onslaught without effort. The armored giant twirled the club in his grip like it was nothing more than a stick. He sent it crashing into the side of another guard's arm, sending him to the ground. A second strike followed, caving in the character's skull. The third and fourth guard rushed him together. They fared as well as the first bunch. The Goblin King swatted them down, leaving them crumpled on the ground. He finished with the remaining two guards in a flurry of strikes. The lone guard from earlier had finally recovered, staggering to his feet and raising his weapon. The hillside! He pumped the short sword once in the air before racing toward the Goblin King. Devrim shut his eyes and exhaled as a thunderous crunch filled the area. He opened them a moment later, staring hard at the black-clad warrior king. Someone's been eating their spinach. Someone's been eating their spinach. Someone's been eating their spinach. There we go. That's best, I think. The Goblin King ignored the quip, stopping in place to regard him. His chest heaved for a few moments as he tilted his head to stare at Devrim. All right. Now we move to the Goblin King. We got here. We'll put him in dude base 1.
If it helps, I sort of went for his presence, like the way he's so big on the cover and dominating is that he was inspired a lot by Darth Vader. So he has this gravitas to him, like this very sonorous basso voice.
Sure. Oh, let's go with -10. -10 on the reverb. Let's go all the way for the bass. You guys won't be able to hear it, but I cranked the bass on his voice up like crazy. Ah, the little slayer. He gestured to the surrounding circle. Is this what you expected? Shook his head more to himself than to Devrim. I didn't think so. But it's the price for what you've started. The first price of many to be paid. And I intend to collect in full. In full. And I intend to collect in full. I think that'll work. Goblin King's hand tightened visibly around his war club. Devrim sucked in a breath through his teeth to help steel himself for what was to come. He dragged the chisel tip of his blade along the ground, drawing a faint line. A quick leap back put him a foot away from it. See that? Do not pass go! Do not collect $200. He flashed a lopsided grin at the Goblin King. The armored king stared at the line in silence before staring at Devrim. Despite no visible eyes, he managed to give off a look of befuddlement. It's the line in the sand! The one you don't cross. Devrim winced in anticipation of another body-encompassing twang of pain from the poison. It never came. He breathed a minor sigh of relief in that it had dissipated. He breathed a minor sigh of relief in that it had dissipated. The Goblin King stood immobile, silent, enough so to make statues seem lively by comparison. Creepy asshole. Then, by all means, come to me. The armor-clad king beckoned Devrim with one hand. I can wait. Can you? The village burns. Your friends are out there. Somewhere. As are my goblins. Who do you think will come out of this? If you want to save them, you'll have to get by me. Stand there, rooted in fear, for as long as you'd like. But the village will burn until ash and echoes are all that are left. Can you survive that? Devrim didn't answer, but the implication was clear. The Goblin King was telling him all that fire wasn't a threat to him. Maybe not, but my sword sure as hell will be. His hands shook on the weapon, and he gritted his teeth as a fire seared the marrow within him. Fine. I'll bring the fight to him. He focused and triggered another skill shot. fleet-footed. A, let's get some water. A chilling chilling current rushed around his feet, making its way through the split-toe boots and into his flesh. He felt like he was walking barefoot over ice. Devrim bounced once in place to reassure himself of his lightness and increased speed. His feet touched back to the ground, and he sprang, pumping his legs until acid burned his sinews. The world rushed by as he moved at a speed that would shame competitive sprinters. Orange tendrils of fire blurred into a single, crackling mass of jarring light. Time to find out if this freak's got eyes. He closed the distance, focusing on the black hole in the helmet where the Goblin King's right eye would be. Thirst hummed in his grip, quivering in a fashion almost as if the blade had a hungry will of its own. A few more steps. He was within reach, twisting to launch the katana in a thrust that'd skewer the king's eye. The Goblin King bowed his head at an angle, catching the tip of the blade and sending it skittering off the helm. Sometimes when I'm saying a word, I can't, decide exactly how I'm going to pronounce it until I'm in the middle of it, and then it screws it up anyway. The Goblin King bowed his head at an angle, catching the tip of the blade and sending it skittering off the hill. Goblin King bowed his head at an angle. Damn it. The Goblin King bowed his head at an angle, catching the tip of the blade and sending it skittering off the helm. A bar flashed to life above the king's head, blipping once in a minute minute. A bar flashed to life. A bar flashed to life above the king's head, blipping once in a minute amount. A bar flashed to life above the king's head, blipping once in a minute amount that would have been almost unnoticeable. He took damage. Renewed by that, Devrim lunged again. The tip of his weapon jabbed against the armored giant like a jackhammer with no reprieve. An endless succession of stabs peppered the black plating, chipping away at the Goblin King's health. A string of obscenities flooded his mind as he tallied the damage per strike. It's not enough. He pivoted, sending the sword into a cast toward the king's throat, hoping he would trigger a critical strike. The Goblin King surged into motion. He hunched forward, releasing a cavernous bellow that shook loose stone from the ground, reverberating through the air for an untold distance. Devrim's strike faltered. Contacting the twin protrusions, resembling small blades, at the base of the king's helmet. The katana struck with an echoing twang. His muscles refused to obey him at the speeds they had moments ago. He felt like he was moving through brackish water, and that his body was too distant from his mind. That's not good. He took the momentary risk to blink, focusing on his character status. Shit. The roar had stripped him of his speed buff, negating the benefits to the point of detriment. He'd been slowed, intimidated by the monstrous howl. The Goblin King capitalized on his temporary lull. He lashed out with a foot, crashing a black steel boot into Devrim's stomach. He lurched backward, nearly tumbling before the Goblin King's hand snatched the front of his robes, hauling him close. Devrim shook within the iron grip. He couldn't break it. The king snapped his head forward, bringing the crown crunching into the front of Devrim's skull. Carmine light. It is carmine, right? Yeah, it's carmine. Carmine light flashed through his vision. The world blurred at the edges, and he could see a faint outline of a reddish bar diminishing. Everything sank as the Goblin King raised him up and hurled him to the ground. A single throb encompassed his whole body, leaving him feeling like he'd been beaten by countless clubs at once. Ow! The health bar flickered before him, a jarring white outline strobing outside what little red was left. Ready to die, Slayer? There won't be a second chance this time. No new world to escape to. I'll make it permanent. The Goblin King raised the war club overhead in both hands. Any last words? Devrim spat near the king's feet. Yeah. Why do asshole villains always talk so much? He gave him a toothy grin. The Goblin King swung the club toward him. How the hell did it all go wrong? The weapon sailed toward his head. His vision swam, blackness encroaching from the corner of his eyes, and he wondered if he'd wake again as consciousness slipped. And that's the prelude, everybody. Okay, so Goblin King, how's that sounding?
That was freaking perfect, dude. And I can't wait to hear what it sounds like with, I think you said you added another layer of bass to it.
I did.
And that's without that.
Yep.
Jeez.
Yes, sir. It's going to sound, and I also have a sound to make it, to an effect to make it sound like it's coming out of a helmet, so.
That's like peak supervillain, man.
Yes, sir. That's why I love doing villains. Okay, let's see. All right, now we're going to move on to chapter 6, you say?
Yep.
And you know who I want to make sure that we're visiting Gamma, because he's going to be maybe my favorite voice to do in this book. Let's see. Moving on to chapter 6. And how long? If I remember correctly, chapter 6 is relatively short. Yeah, it's not that.
Yeah, that's quick combat when he meets the rest of the party, or his starting party. I think Gamma's already gone by then, though. He ran for safety because he's a little... Oh, no, never mind. He's there. Oops. He's going to run for safety.
Does he have a croak in this one?
Yeah, I think he does. Because I try to pepper that through almost all of his dialogue.
Okay, cool. All right, we're just going to start at the top of chapter 6. Are we talking to the mayor in this chapter as well?
Yeah, the mayor's in here.
You were talking about?
Eric is in here, the half troll. I believe Jace, the pale elf, is in here. Gamma's in here, and the mayor. So okay. That's everybody, except for Keely, the female, who comes in later, which is going to be chapter 10, I believe.
Okay. Any direction for the mayor?
I don't want to say he has a snivelly voice, but it's definitely on the lighter side, a bit quirky, a little bit faster paced.
Okay. A little bit higher then, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. And American, like, is everybody on the space station American? Or
that's honestly up for debate, because the way I described it was it's pretty ethnically diverse. I mean, Dev's Asian. He kind of has like an Indian skin tone to him. A lot of the other characters are technically Spanish, white, minority based, but because they're in a fantasy game, they're all playing monstrous races, so you can't really tell. So I left that up to you if you want for being nebulous voices, considering you don't learn who many of them are in real life since they've adopted these new personas since they can't leave this game.
Okay. All right. So
I trust you wholeheartedly with this as an audio performer.
I think what we'll do is we'll make sure that the player characters maintain just this this American accent, because I think the NPCs are going to be the ones that are going to be accented like more. It seems like the culture within the space station would be relatively blended enough,
more uniform for a single voice, considering they're all learning.
Yeah, they're all
I guess space. Different differentiation for the listeners. They'll automatically be able to separate. Yeah.
And about how long has everybody, or has this space station been there? Because it seems like Devrim was born in the space station, and he's 21, right? So that would mean they've been up there at least 21 years, and so I think maybe culture might have already blended enough to where everyone's got a sort of uniform accent. Okay, especially since these are all young people, right? Except for the mayor, who he went in there because, well, we won't get into that. We'll find out here. Whoops.
Right.
Uh-oh. What happened? My keyboard maestro turn off? For no reason? There we go. Okay. Chapter 6. Asked. The Goblin King. The pack gained ground, covering 2/3 of the distance between him and them in seconds. Devrim slid his feet against the soft earth, settling into position as he braced himself. His gaze remained fixed on the beast leading the charge. The Alpha. The lead Kuftar increased its gap between the rest of the pack, moving so swiftly across the ground it looked like its feet were gliding over the air instead. Dev angled his katana horizontally so the chisel tip lined up with the approaching monster's gullet. Come on! The Kuftar Alpha sped up, coming within a dozen feet of him. Dev ran through the previous scenario when he'd used his skill shot. His lips pulled at the edges, breaking out into a wide smile as he noted the ability had fully cooled down. He activated it and surged forward to bash the Alpha in the skull. The stunned beast reeled, flopping to the ground. The rest of the pack faltered, seeing their Alpha brought down. They slowed their momentum until they came to a crawl several yards behind their leader. Each of the remaining beasts hung back, snarling as they crouched low to form a defensive semicircle. If I move on the Alpha, they might all jump me. I can't win against those odds. I can't win against those odds. He glanced over his shoulder. But maybe I don't have to. Devrim raised a hand overhead, gesturing to the fallen leader. An arrow zipped by, nearly skinning the top of his finger as it passed. The shot sank into the meat of the beast's right foreleg. The surrounding Kuftars bristled in unison as they looked for the source of the shot. The Alpha recovered faster than the Kuftar Devrim had struck earlier. It bounded to its feet, lunging to close the remaining distance. It bounded to its feet, lunging to close the remaining distance between them. The action galvanized the rest of the pack to follow the Alpha's lead. Devrim moved to meet the creature, slashing across its face. The blade parted one of the 4 portions of the monster's mouth. As the Kuftar Alpha stumbled, thrashing its head side to side in agony, he followed up with a short, clubbing blow with the base of the hilt. It didn't do much but jar the creature. He ran another mental tally of how much time had passed since Eric had pinned the last Kuftar. As if on cue, a net fell over 1/3 of the remaining Kuftar making up the pack. The surprise binding startled the free hyena creatures, setting them into a yapping panic as they broke their formation, rushing past Devrim. The beasts raced toward Eric. He smiled, knowing the pale elf bowman and the trapper would be able to pick off the Kuftar headed their way. He smiled, knowing the pale elf bowman and the trapper would be able to pick off the Kuftar headed their way. Devrim turned his attention back to the recovering Alpha, giving it no reprieve as he jabbed the tip of his weapon into its snout. He followed with a shallow graze over the Kuftar's eyes. A new icon appeared above the hyena's head, resembling a red gash with dripping globules. Status effect. Blinded. When a creature's eyes are damaged or impaired in some manner, their reactions are slowed. They also have a greater chance to miss attacks. While under this effect, they are more susceptible to critical strikes and unable to dodge effectively. I'll take it. Devrim unleashed a flurry of adrenaline-fueled strikes, eyeing the diminishing stamina bar above. It continued to whittle away with each blow, yet he noted it did so slower than before. Must be the earlier buff. He grinned, deciding to risk what he had and pushing the beast without pause. He grinned, deciding to risk what he had in pushing the beast. This sentence has stumped me. Hold on. Okay, I think I get it. He grinned, deciding to risk what he had and pushing the beast without pause. He grabbed the creature by one of its ears, eliciting a sharp yowl of pain from the monster as he did. Devrim brought the blade low and slammed it upward into the soft place below the alpha's sternum. His stamina hovered a hair's breadth from giving out completely. He gritted his teeth and dragged the blade through the beast as if trying to bisect it. The alpha's health gave out first. It collapsed to the ground, heaving a last sigh as a torrent of blood and gore spilled from its belly along with its innards. Its death sent an unseen wave rolling over him that spread through the village and nearby field. The surrounding Kuftar froze, trading frantic looks. They yipped simultaneously as they fanned out to run in different directions. Each of the monsters lost interest in the village and people. Each of the monsters lost interest in the village and people occupying it now. Devrim collapsed to the ground, chest straining for breath as his stamina bar flashed empty. He allowed himself to fall onto his back and laugh what little he could at the triumph. A prompt flashed to life. Kaftar slain. That's the wrong track. Kaftar slain count. Kaftar slain count increased. Alpha slain. He watched the counter skip up by multiples, leaving him to wager. He watched the counter skip up by multiples, leaving him to wager that the alpha had counted for several regular kills. The stamina bar flickered once before slowly inching forward as it regenerated. His muscles ached, but enough of his strength returned to allow him to push against the ground. He rose to a shaky standstill, waving a hand to the approaching pale elf and half-troll players. He rose to a shaky standstill, waving a hand to the approaching pale elf and half-troll players. They traded grins before flashing them his way. No. They traded grins before flashing them his way. All right, this is the elf. We'll put him in 3, I guess. Nice job taking out the alpha like that. How'd you know how to do that? The pale elf tilted his head to the side, regarding him with mild curiosity. Devrim finally managed to note the player's name hovering above his head. Hawk-eyed Jace. Dev ignored the self-aggrandizing name and decided to answer the elf's. Dev ignored the self-aggrandizing name and decided to answer the elf's question instead. I got the idea from the bestiary or bestiary? God damn it. It's another one of those words.
Sorry about that.
Not your fault. Bestiary. Wait, where is it? Okay. I got the idea from the bestiary entry that popped up after I killed one. No, not quite clear enough. I got the idea from the bestiary entry that popped up after I killed one. It let me know that taking out the alpha could scatter the pack. Silence fell. Eric and Jace pursed their lips and glanced at each other before turning back to face him. And this is still Jace. How did you get that to happen? I didn't get any prompts until just now, and we'd finished scaring them off. I still don't have one for the alpha. Jace's brows knitted together as he turned his attention to the fallen Kuftar leader. Correction. Now I do. But I had to focus on that. For that. Devrim shook the blood and gore from his katana. Damn it. Devrim shook the blood and gore from his katana, kneeling to clean it further by sliding it through the grass when he caught sight of the remaining ichor fading from existence. Must be something to clean up player gear after completing a battle. He sheathed his weapon and looked at Jace. I'm not sure how I got it to happen. Just that it's been like that from the second I entered the world. First time I saw the Ragman was the same. A prompt. Okay. Ragman. What are those? Eric rolled his neck, hefting his spear to rest atop one of his shoulders. Devrim described the creatures to him. The half-troll frowned. Didn't see any of them in the clearing. He turned to Jace. You? The pale elf shook his head. Clearing? Where did you guys load into the world? Devrim's heart skipped once he tried to figure out what separated his experiences so far from theirs. There has to be a reason. An empty forest clearing. Oh, not so empty. We loaded in together and had to fend off some feral things that looked like chubby raccoons. At least, they looked like the raccoons from old biology vids. Eric shrugged and glanced at the mayor's home. We should head back and figure out what the heck that was about. We're not supposed to be attacked here from what I understand. One more time. We're not supposed to be attacked here from what I understand. Evram's mind raced with dozens of questions, but he stowed them. The sooner he had a handle on the immediate issue, he'd have more time to dedicate to the others surrounding his character and different experiences so far. He turned and led the way back to the mayor's house. Dev heard Eric and Jace fall into step behind him, but tuned their presences out of mind, letting his thoughts dwell on what had happened. He'd encountered other players in the game world, meaning they were most likely others sentient. He'd encountered other players in the game world, meaning they were most likely others sentenced to execution who'd gotten another chance. They'd reached the village before him. It could have meant that they had entered the world closer to New Haven, or they'd been loaded in before he had. They might have had more time to explore or learn. He shook his head a moment later, deciding that they too must have been prompted in some manner to head for the village as soon as possible. The thought brought to mind the creature responsible for his own journey to New Haven. Crap. Crap. Devrim put a hand to the side of his face. Gamma! He repeated the call several times, sweeping the nearby area with his gaze for any sign of movement. A small mass, a bit larger than his fist, bounded into view. The uppity toad bounced toward him, releasing a throaty burble. All right, so we'll put him in Dude 3 as well, because Jace doesn't talk a lot. Ah. We did it! Gamma inflated his throat pouch in what Devrim took to be a gesture of pride. We? He eyed the amphibian. The toad deflated. Of course! Did you think you? He jabbed a stubby finger at the two behind Devrim. Any of you would be able to defeat those things without my rousing battle cry? Who filled you with endless vigor during that fight? Whose voice sang through your veins, lending you strength to slay those beasts? Mine? There was no question in the toad's voice, only iron resolution. Devrim flashed Eric and Jace a hapless smile. Sorry. He's got an ego bigger than any of the guards back on the station. And that's saying something. The pair behind him snickered. Gamma blinked at the comment, pursing his lips. Devrim deigned not to clarify and picked up his pace to make it to the mayor's door. He banged the base of a fist against it. Each thud shook the door in its frame with enough force he feared it might come loose. A heavy click sounded off, followed by the familiar prompt indicating it had been unlocked. He pushed his way inside, taking care to ease the door with his shoulder. The mayor sat cross-legged near the cushions. He poured an amber liquid out of a porcelain kettle into cups of the same material and color. Minute plums of steam rose from each of the mugs. He nodded to them in a nonchalant manner as he set the kettle down. Devram took the silent cue, making his way to the low table and falling to his knees to take one. Thank you. The mayor didn't reply, choosing to eye the other two players. They fell by Devram's side, following his lead. It gets hot in this booth, y'all. I need some kind of fan system. Some kind of ventilation.
We need to hurry up and make you a multimillionaire so you can get like a liquid nitrogen cooling.
Yeah. That's the way to go. Tell me if you like it. Tell me if you like it. I've been working on the recipe for quite a while now. The mayor scooped up a cup of his own, blowing on it before bringing it to his lips. Devram raised his own and gave it a few puffs. The first sip rolled over his tongue, feeling oily and acidic. It reminded him of lubrication fluid that sprayed out during maintenance runs if someone didn't wipe down the hydraulic rods after coating them. Eventually, everyone working that detail would get a globule or two on their lips and tongues. The taste could drive someone to retch. He set his cup down, coughing and placing a hand to his chest. I think you need to keep working on that one, Mayor. Damn. I think you need to keep working on that, Mayor. There we go. Devram gave him a lopsided smile. Catman slipped. The Catman sipped slowly, holding out far better than he had. After a handful of seconds, the mayor lowered the cup. I think you're right. I want to do a more cat-like cough. Oh, this guy has been... So let's fix that real quick. Back down to -30. Nope, no. Go. And... there. I think you're right. He hacked once, placing a hand over his mouth. Excuse me. Sorry, had to try it and figured, why not with company? Devram refrained from mentioning he wasn't fond of being a guinea pig. Much of his prior life had been nothing more than that, not to mention his current situation. Right, well, the mayor brushed the cup aside. Thank you for taking care of those Kaftar. Not how I wanted to have you introduced to the world, but what's done is done. Given that I'm the local quest anchor point, I can mark that as a completed event for you and let you reap the reward. Given that I'm the local quest anchor point, I can mark that as a completed event for you and let you reap the rewards. Ev's vision flashed a brilliant white smeared with a faint shade of orange. The jarring light vanished, leaving behind a set of messages. Random encounter complete. Kaftar attack. Rewards: Kaftar pelt ×4. Kaftar teeth ×10. Alpha Kaftar mane. Alpha Kaftar jawbone. Devram opened his mouth, but the mayor held up a hand. You're probably wondering what that was about. It wasn't a question the way he'd voiced it. And you likely have several more about the state of things. How you should go about saving Lorien to make it habitable. Devram narrowed his eyes. How's he know about that? I didn't think the characters in here would be programmed with that knowledge. They're indoors now. There we go. Let's turn off the ping pong, turn on the bedroom. Done. He flashed Eric and Jace a quick look. They returned it, furrowing their brows. "You're right." The mayor placed a hand on the table. "None of the programmed characters know it. Your mistake is thinking that you're the first people to set foot in Lorien. You're not." He hooked a thumb to his chest. "I am." Dev blinked. "You... what? Who are you? What shift two are you from? Who are your parents?" Each question came to him before he finished voicing the previous. How the hell did you end up in power and mayor of a village?" Mayor raised a hand to calm him. "You're asking the wrong questions, but I'll answer them soon. You should be concerned with something else." Devram waited for him to elaborate. "Why did a pack of Kuftar, normally relegated to living in grassland, plains, and savannas, choose to go this far out of their way to attack this place? A place with little to offer, safe homes to hide behind, and nothing new but you lot." The mayor jabbed a finger at the three of them. Devram put it together. "Someone or something is targeting us." Someone or something is targeting us. Eric and Jace were already here, and I just arrived." The mayor nodded. "Kuftar can be trained to harass and threaten settlements. Few in Lorien have managed that. Notably, goblins have. Among them, one being in particular has risen to power and is threatening everything. The Goblin King. And he's after you." All right, so that's chapter 6. Get a little breather here. Okay, so what's going on in chapter 7? What other characters are we...
Chapter 7 was just if you wanted to continue working on them, it's not necessary. That's just a continuation of dialogue with these exact people. So you can skip it to go to, I believe chapter 8 is when like the next main party, chapter 10 is when the next main party member pops up, which is Keely.
Okay.
I believe that's when they actually
if I remember correctly, chapter 7 is a really fun chapter.
Okay, yeah, I'm enjoying the hell out of this. Like, this is perfect.
Okay. All right. We're just going to cruise on through, y'all, and then we'll hit chapter 10. Ray Johnson says, "Love Bruce Lee in the background. It fits. Is that for inspiration?" No, it's just because Bruce Lee's the shit. And, yeah, I just like to represent. Okay. All right. Yes, Microcosm, you do need to read this. It's a good one. Okay. Chapter 7. Here goes. See, the cool thing about doing these exclusive ones is that I can just record. So the prelude, chapter 6, and chapter 7 are going to be done before I even really get started recording. Chapter 7. Asked. A cat named Tom. Tommy the cat. "Tommy the cat is my name. And I say unto thee. Say, baby, do you want to lay down by me? Say, baby, do you want to lay down by my side? Say, baby, do you want to lay down by me? I say, baby. Say, baby." Has anyone else heard that song?
I have. I'm kind of glad you got the reference, though.
"There was thick was cat calls," no pun intended.
Oh, there's a chapter that references that later on. I think it's like very near the end. There's a chapter called like The Cat's Last Call.
"Why is he after us?" Dev's hand fell instinctively to the hilt of his weapon. It took him a moment to realize he'd gripped it. He pulled his hand away, taking a breath to still himself. We just arrived. We haven't done a thing to him. The mayor shook his head. But you might. Look at it from his point of view. You know about the adaptive personality matrix? Devram inclined his head, catching Eric and Jace doing the same. It means creatures and humanoid characters. It means creatures and humanoid characters in Lorien can rationalize, infer, learn. He sees you as a threat. Something's not adding up. Devram eyed the mayor askance. But how did he know we arrived? The mayor didn't meet his gaze. I'm not sure on that. Only that he's currently the largest power in Lorien, and growing stronger. No one else could have tamed Kuftar and sent them to New Haven, the only spot new players arrive at. Makes sense, but he's leaving something out. As if on cue, the mayor seemed to have the answer. The Goblin King has spies over the country, not to mention traveling parties passing through to collect information and spot new players. Excuse me. When you load in, there's quite a show of it in the air. Oop, I just bumped something. Yeah, I messed it up. When you load in, there's quite a show of it in the air. He pointed to the roof. The explanation mollified him. Devram sighed in relief. Well, that's something. All right. What do we need to do to make this place habitable, then? Everyone's eyes widened, staring at him like he'd said something stupid. Everyone's eyes widened, staring at him like he'd said something stupid. Right now? The way you are? The way you are? Right now? The way you are? The mayor snorted and smoothed his robe. You'll need to venture out and grow. The Goblin King character has risen to his current status after years of surviving Lorien. You've been here. He's not British. You've been here hours. You'll need to learn, make mistakes, dangerous ones, and hunt. You'll need to delve into your classes and master them. That comes from challenging the greatest beasts you can and walking away with their hides and more. Fair enough. Survive and thrive mentality, huh? Devram flashed a knowing look at Eric and Jace. No different than back on the station. We'd been pushed around forever, punished for crimes we didn't commit. Now's a chance to earn out of that and make our own way. I'm okay with that. You too? The half-troll bowed his head.
Hell yeah! I ran double shifts every damn day on assembly.
He rolled his shoulders, wincing in reflexive pain as if the memory of his old job caused him to ache.
Besides, what choice do we have? If we don't do this, we'll die. If we don't do this, we die.
The mayor bristled, his fur standing on end. Devram caught note of that just as the Catman composed himself. What was that about? The pale elf to his side remained quiet, clenching his jaw in what Dev took to be firm resolution. Good. You're resolved. Now, leave my home. Don't get killed. If you find something shiny, consider bringing it back here. I may let you purchase a home here. The mayor shooed them with a hand. Wait, that's it? Devram got to his feet, hand on his blade again. You haven't told us anything. Where do we start? Where do we stay? Hell, who are you for that? Who are you for that matter? It didn't slip my mind, but I think something did pass. It didn't slip my mind, but I think something did pass by yours. Dev didn't wait for the mayor to retort. We could have run and saved ourselves. He gestured to Eric and Jace. The mayor shied away from Dev's look. Well, yes, you have a point. I suppose it would be fair to answer some of your questions and show my gratitude. He put a hand to his mouth and cleared his throat pointedly. My name is Tom Perlin. Devrim narrowed his eyes. Is that... Did you really choose that? Tom's mouth spread into a Cheshire... Tom's mouth spread into a Cheshire-like grin. It fits. As for more of who I am, I once went by Thomas. I lived on the station as you all did. He raised a hand as Devrim opened his mouth. No, I'm not a forbidden child. I entered Lorien to test it out long ago when it was first developed. Not refined. Tom let out a rueful chuckle. You see, I was dying. The words fell with leaden weight. Here I was worried about that myself, and there's someone else in the same boat. No chance but to jump into a new world for a second chance. No chance but to jump into a new world for a second chance. I developed bone cancer. Tom's wide smile faltered, turning into something brittle. Despite all the advances, all the technology we managed to come up with over the stations to improve our lives, we never did manage to crack that. The grin returned, inching slowly across his face like it was forced. Devrim knew that expression. It came from long practice in lying to oneself. He'd worn that same smile when having to appease people in power on the station, when having to pretend work was bearable when it was anything but, and when having to lie about the treatments he'd received at the hands of the guards and labor forces. And when having to lie about the treatment he'd received at the hands of the guards and labor forces. I'm sorry. Devrim couldn't meet Tom's eyes for a moment. He worked moisture into his throat, clearing it before beginning again. I didn't know they let someone into this place so long ago. You figured better a shot at this just in case it worked out? The mayor nodded. Dev swallowed and reminded himself that he took that very chance for the same reason. The possibility of death, after all, was only that. No guarantee. It certainly beat the alternative in his mind. How long has it been? Years. I've lost track of the longer scale of time, in all honesty. It's really served no purpose for me till recently. Ah, that is unacceptable. Did that ruin it? Yep. It's really served no purpose for me till recently. Tom gestured at the three of them. I was instilled as mayor to ensure I had a comfy life. The programmed and pre-generated people in New Haven would tend to my needs as well as their own. The village is never in need of anything. What little comes as outside luxury passes through on the backs and in the pockets of traders. He folded his hands together. I live comfortably. Sounds nice, but comfort won't pave our way to a new life. A stable one. And that's what we need. It won't be that for you and... It won't be that for you, and for that, I'm really sorry. Sincerity hung in Tom's voice, the sort Dev never thought he'd hear. You're going to have to earn your way. In Lorien, for many, that comes through hunting. I'll guide you as best I can for what you've done. I don't know what it'll be worth. I've never progressed my class and made inroads into hunting. He rolled his shoulders in a casual shrug. But I have access to a lot of the digital... damn it, that was a perfect little mouth click that I can't replicate. But I have access to a lot of the digital world's mechanics. You'll want to know those. He has a point. Short of what you need to know is this. You have to hunt and quest to grow. The world rewards successful quests with ability points. Do an easy quest, you might get one. The harder the quest, the more likely you will get one. Some are difficult enough to earn you multiple points. Depends on what the creature you're hunting is. In addition to this, successfully killing creatures earns you prestige. Kill something impressive, your renown grows. With that, you can capitalize on your fame and buy things cheaper, sell them pricier, and so on. It's a celebrity status thing. Tom rolled his eyes like he found the idea laughable. Devram committed it all to memory. Kill something far beneath you, however, and you can lose that status. It's seen as unsporting. The last thing to take into account is crafting. This is a world that thrives on using what you can harvest from the monsters you kill. Sadly, you're not given a choice to truly pick and take what you want. What you get is what you get. You can use the material to develop new weapons and armor. That is how you will be able to better give and take punishment in Lorien. When you leave New Haven, you'll be held to those rules. It's why I've never left. Tom ran the back of his hand against his mouth, licking the appendage. Devram weighed the final bits of what the mayor had told him. The world and his life would revolve around constantly pushing himself, endangering himself for the sole purpose of growing. The unsaid message was clear. Stagnation is death. The thought brought a single question to his mind he needed to voice. Why did they develop the world this way? What's the point if they wanted to give us a second chance and help the population crisis on the stations? Both Eric and Jace looked at him, frowning in unison before turning their gazes on Tom. His query had struck a nerve, and everyone knew it. Tom stopped licking his hand, turning away from the stairs. His chest shook as he hacked in a fit of violent coughing. The final cough launched a mass of tangled fur, coated in bile and saliva, out from his mouth to squelch onto the floor. Ev stared at it. Then Tom. The mayor gave him a weak smile. Sorry. Can't help that. Bit of cruel humor from the developers, I suppose. He cleared his throat, a somber look hanging in his face. As for the population crisis, Tom shied away from their looks for several seconds. This world is the solution, though not how you think. Silence flooded the room, waiting to be broken. Tom licked his lips and clasped his hands together. You're already gone from the real world. Devram rolled his eyes. Yeah, we know this, but once we saw... Yeah, we know this, but once we solve whatever we need to here, we can... Interruption. Tom cut him off with a wave of his hand. There is no solving Lorien. You can make it habitable, but you can't go back to tell people that. There is no going back. You have nothing to go back to. You weren't copied over and uploaded here. You were transferred. Tom's words fell with iron weight. Dev swallowed the lump of air that had formed in his throat, casting a questioning glance at Eric and Jace. You're saying this was one way? That we're dead? Tom inclined his head. All right. The chapter in the books. It was already in the book. Recorded. All right. So that's Tom the mayor. You're cool with the orc. I hope. Is there more? What's his name? Gamma in chapter 10?
Let's find out right now. Fast forward right to there. I believe so, because I think that's one where everyone's talking to each other. Devram, Keeley, Eric, Gamma, Jace. Yeah, everyone's in that except for Tom, because they've left by then. So this is the actual functional party.
Okay, cool. It looks like this one's relatively short, so I'll just go through the whole thing. And this will be a cold read because I haven't read up to this part.
And you got the notes for Keely's voice, right?
Yes.
Awesome.
Let's see here. We got smoky and breathless, always carrying a slight sensual undertone, even if she's not being overtly suggestive. Okay. Got it. Chapter 10. Past. Manslayer. The world slipped away from Devrim as he tried to quell the beehive of thoughts. Why would Tom lie? Why would he get out of it? Each answer he came up with failed to satisfy. The thought of Tom lying to them banded his chest with hot iron. The mayor had been the first open contact with him since he'd entered the world, going so far as to encourage him, offer him some aid. How do we know what you're saying is true? Jace kept his voice level, but Devrim picked up on the undercurrent of doubt lingering within the question. The pale elf wasn't buying her story. Keely didn't miss a beat. She eyed Jace, then faced Devrim. Okay. 1. She raised an index finger. Why would the Goblin King be after you? The Catwoman gave them no chance for a reply. No, really. All three of you just loaded into the world. What possible threat could you be? She held up a second finger. 2. If you were any danger at all, why not already eliminate you? Eric will be due too.
He tried!
Eric slashed a hand through the air as if trying to dismiss all of Keely's arguments with the simple action.
Tell her, Jace. Devrim. Back at New Haven, we were attacked by a bunch of Kuftar. Tom told us only goblins can train them, and there's one person who's ruling them now.
The half-troll inhaled, casting a wary look around their surroundings as if he expected to be ambushed any second.
The Goblin King.
Keely snorted. Uh-huh. And tell me this. Have any of you, even once, seen him? The crackling of the fire was the only sound for countless minutes. Devrim thought over what she'd said, weighing it against all he thought of Tom. I saw some stars back on the station, mostly through some of the viewports on the way to shifts. You know what I never caught glimpse of? He let the silence hang for a handful of seconds. The sun. Dev shrugged. It doesn't mean it wasn't out there. Just that I never saw it. Its light helped power a lot of the solar panels along the station's surface. That unseen something kept us going. She arched a brow. Faith? You're going to believe in the Goblin King because of that. Something has to be chasing you, is that it? Something has to be chasing you. Something has to be chasing you, is that it? You need a monster in the closet, a bully, to have some reason to get through this new life and world. Devrim held her stare, gritting his teeth. I've had enough bullies in my life. He waved to Eric and Jace. We all have, and you're no different. Not if you're here. We're all dead back there. He hooked a thumb over his shoulder. So it doesn't matter what reasons we find to go on, so long as we have them. Sometimes that's all people need, a reason. Any reason. His chest heaved, and he took a few breaths to still himself. A visible lump formed in Keely's throat. It took her a moment to swallow it. Dead? She blinked several times, her mouth moving without sound as if she'd forgotten how to speak. Dying here. She inhaled, shutting her eyes for a long pause.
So, we really are stuck here. There is no home. What I said earlier about dying here, I just... Keely bounded to her feet, turning on the ball of 1 foot before breaking into a sprint. She vanished into the thicket of trees. All right, let me play that a little differently because she's about to peace out. What I said about dying... What I said earlier about dying here, I just... There we go. And we'll redo that. Keely bounded to her feet, turning on the ball of 1 foot before breaking into a sprint. She vanished into the thicket of trees. Devram turned to look at Eric and Jace. The pair stared back at him, tilting their heads in her direction, giving him a knowing look. He sulked. Hey, you ran your mouth. Jace mimed a pair of flapping lips with a hand. You go talk to her. She could be a huge help. Eric nodded in agreement. And what about you two? Dev eyed the pair. Jace rolled to his side, turning away from him. It's night. We've got a long walk to Mud Deep tomorrow. A quest to rest up for. He feigned an exaggerated yawn. Let's do that. Oops. A quest to rest up for. Yeah, that works. Dev scowled, facing Eric. The half-troll had the grace to look away from him, stretching his arms up as if fatigued. He folded his hands under his head and shut his eyes without a word. Figures. Devram jammed the base of his sheath into the ground, pushing off it to rise. Stay here, Gamma. What? Dev waved him off, cutting the protest short. I'll be back. He headed after Keely, turning his profile to squeeze through a section of trees growing far too close to each other. This'll go well, chasing after the cat girl in the dark... Let's try this again. This'll go well, chasing after the cat girl in the dark forest at night after being ambushed by crazy people. The Asian guy always dies in the spooky woods. He grumbled incoherently to himself as he trudged after her, trying to work out the path she'd taken. The trees thinned ahead. Devram broke into a clearing not unlike the one the campfire had been set in. The space above him was clear, unobscured by the dense foliage that had made up most of the forest. The sky hung like a canvas of black tinged with smears of astral blue and threaded with glimmering sequins of starlight. It reminded him of home. Almost. He tore his gaze away, moving further into the clearing. The space showed no signs that Keely had passed through it. The grass remained perfectly untouched save for where he'd walked over it. He cupped both his hands to his face. Keely! No answer. He sighed, calling again as he marched on. A familiar growl rolled through the forest before something choked it off. Devram edged his way toward the source of the noise. The animalistic noises returned, weaker than before. He crept up to the other end of the clearing, peering around the nearest tree. Keely sat slumped against the opposite side. Her knees were tucked to her chest, arms wrapped tight around them. What do you want? She didn't bother to look at him. Dev said nothing, motioning to the ground beside her. She inclined her head in what could have passed for an invitation. He made his way to her side and sat down, staring at her in silence. Keely rubbed the back of her hand against her nose and sniffed once. What? She finally looked up at him, her eyes catching rogue glints of light from the stars above. "I'm sorry about what I said and how I said it." Devram offered her a lopsided smile as way of an apology. "This hasn't been easy for any of us, I know, and we probably disagree on a lot, but there's one thing I feel we could agree on." He stopped himself short, letting the sentence hang in the air in hopes of catching her curiosity. She regarded him askance. "Oh, we need each other. We need each other. You've been here long enough to get a better idea of how to survive. We've got numbers, which, to be honest, can only help. If there's anything I've learned reading mythology, it's that heroes need to work together. It's great on paper to have the lone warrior taking on quests, but in reality, you need people. Good ones. By your side." He offered Keeley a hand, keeping the smile from earlier on his face. She returned to the expression, trading grips with him. "That's not a stupid point." Her eyes danced like she was nursing a second smile. She pulled her hand free from his, running it through her hair. Dev hadn't noticed earlier, but the woman's canines were larger than normal, appearing more like actual fangs. "I try not to be stupid. Seems like a good way to get killed." She rolled her eyes as if she didn't entirely believe him. He placed a hand to his chest in mock indignation. "I'm wounded." Keeley snorted, arching her brows to brush off the comment. "Please, if I, snorted. Please, if I wanted that, I could wound you easier with these." Ugh. "Please, if I wanted that, I could wound you easier with these." She flexed her hands, extending the claws before retracting them. "Eh, not my kink." Keeley's chest shook as she fell back against the tree trunk, breaking out into laughter. "Keep dreaming." The chuckling subsided into a weak torrent of giggles before she composed herself. "That was the first laugh I've had since coming to this place. Thank you. I needed that." "No problem." He let out a No problem. He let out a little chortle himself, reveling in the fact that they could find some semblance of humor despite all that had happened. They sat quietly for minutes, turning their gazes up to the sky, watching the silvery dots above flash. "Do you miss it?" Keeley kept her eyes trained on the stars. "I'm trying not to." "Is that weird? All we ever had was work. Wake up, be forced into the labor crews, work hard, get no thanks, maybe get beaten, get shoved back into your room. The only times we had to live were in the mandatory VR classes and when I got to read or game. It's funny, all that time wishing, dreaming of an escape. Now we've got it. Part of me is still fixated on home." "It's not funny. I get it. That same part of me, like you, almost believed one day we'd go back and show people that this world was better. But there is no going back." She sighed, rubbing her hands against her legs. "It makes it easier, though, the idea of surviving here, if here's all we have left." He nodded in agreement. Something changed in her posture, becoming more rigid, confident, as she straightened against the tree. A feral, lopsided grin spread over her face, revealing her sharpened canines again. "So, want to learn a little bit more about how to survive here? A little bit more about yourself? Your class?" He matched her grin. "Hell yes." Let me see. This is a chapter break. Let's see how much more we have in this chapter. We'll just finish it up. Kind of long, but I don't care, because I'm recording. Half, 1, 2. Evram stalked through the forest, occasionally glancing up to the treetops where Keeley bounded among the limbs with feline grace. He did his best to keep pace with the Catwoman as she led him to where she'd promised to show him. He did his best to keep pace with the Catwoman as she led him to where she'd promised to show him more about the world and his place in it as a slayer. She pounced again, bending with acrobatic flexibility, arching her back before slapping open palms against a thick branch. Keely swung her legs, using the momentum to launch herself up and forward to the next tree. Devrim mumbled to himself as he kicked a gnarled pair of upturned roots out of his way. Show off. He glanced up again to see Keely had frozen, hanging by all fours upside down from a branch that didn't look solid enough to hold her. He pressed his tongue against the back of his teeth, hissing to get her attention. She looked at him. "What is it?" He hoped her enhanced hearing picked up on his hushed tones. Just taking a heat break, guys. Oh, Jesus. We still got an audience. It's cool. I wish I could transmit the heat through the video so you guys knew what I was feeling. It's like a sauna. It really, it really is. It's funny because I can just open the door and it feels like it drops maybe 15 degrees immediately. Keely pointed ahead with a finger. He followed the gesture, spotting a familiar shape skulking through the woods ahead. Another chaste? Devrim crept closer, concealing the bulk of his body behind a tree as he watched the criminal. The sheath shook against his hip. A gentle buzz made its way into the base of his skull, rolling through into his gums and teeth. What the hell? He placed a hand on the sword to keep it from rattling. The sensation filled his palm, radiating warmth through his skin. His body moved of its own accord, urged by something primal. He drew the weapon and looked to Keely. Her eyes widened, shooting him a questioning look. Devrim's heart beat like a drum, resonating into his ears. A red lens seemed to color the world before him. He prowled toward the chaste, placing a hand on a nearby tree as he watched the man plod about. The menu flared to life without his input. Okay, wait a second. I missed something. I guess I don't know what a chaste is because I haven't come to that part in the reading yet.
They're just humans, but they're part of like a subgroup that were chased out of towns. Their description was earlier, but
Oh, okay.
think of them as like almost like what's that subset of England that has like a really tough accent? Scouse or
Oh, maybe you mean the travelers. Like the people who live in caravans?
no, not tinkers and fiddlers. These guys are there's like this really tough British accent. These guys are just thugs essentially. The chase are people who are chased out of towns who are a criminal. They're caught and they band together. They're like bandits.
Okay. Scouse. If you wanted a Scouse accent, I could do it, but I just have to practice it.
You don't have to. It was just like they're very thuggish people.
Okay.
All
right, I'll just give them I'll just Cockneys about as easy.
There you go. That's thank you. That's the one I was thinking.
The one you were looking for. Okay.
Yeah. I'm American. I don't need to know my British.
Character: Devrim Baines. Class/race: Slayer. 7 Bloodlust. The last word pulsated in sync with his heartbeat before the menu collapsed. When did that number go up? A pair of twigs cracked underneath his foot. The sound rattled through the woods. The chased man spun in place, trying to identify where the noise had come from. Another wave of adrenaline surged through him and buried all caution. Devrim rushed the criminal, drowning all thoughts with a frenzied scream. The chased sputtered and fiddled with something at his waist. He pulled free a curved dagger, its metal catching enough starlight to glint. His head was shaped like a lumpy stone, solid, with a protruding jaw that made the man seem oafish. He had He had shaved his hair down to a short fuzz of all black. The chased man lobbed the dagger from one hand to the other, as if trying to intimidate him with the action. To Dev, the world looked as if someone had washed it in a deep carmine. The basso beats? I guess it would be basso.
I'm probably wrong. I've always said it basso, but because there's no accent over the A, so I don't know if it's pronounced any differently than bass. It's an extension of that word.
Yeah. It looks like there's both pronunciations are correct. Because I'm used to what that reminds me of is basso continue. I think was it again? Where'd it go? Okay, we'll say basso because both are right, or basso. I mean, wait, let me listen one more time. Basso. Okay. Where to go? The basso beats of his heart came in louder, filling his head with endless thundering. Pressure built along with it. His skull felt like it was caught between a pair of vice grips. The trifecta assaulting his senses pushed all coherent thoughts from his mind, leaving him driven by an uncontrollable fervor. He hadn't realized he'd brought the sword up over his shoulder at an angle until it was cast into a diagonal strike. The chased panicked, eyes wide, trying to bring his knife up to intercept the katana and backpedal at the same time. He faltered, sending his arm out too wide. Dev's weapon bit into the chast's limb above the elbow. The attack stopped 2/3 of the way through, leaving the man to gawk, unable to scream. Devram pulled the blade clean out of the wound and swung it like a cudgel in both hands at the man's neck. It passed through without a hint of resistance. As soon as the chast's head and body toppled to the ground, the hot flood rushing through his body ceased. He felt like his muscles had been stretched thin and flattened. His body wobbled under its own weight, leaving him to stumble to the side for support. A pair of arms slipped under his to keep him steady. The sword thrummed in his grip. Human slain count increased. Awakening. The antiquated katana has tasted enough blood of man and monster alike to remember its old purpose. It quivers in excitement at the promise of more. Feed it to unlock its true potential. He had no time to contemplate the update as another followed, asking him to consider his newly awoken blade's name. Devram blinked, his vision still shifting between tides of soft reds and the darker tones of night. He considered what the previous pop-up had told him about the weapon's need to feed and thirst. Sounds like a good name. Thirst. Dev entered the name in and watched the item update in the menu. He sighed, hoping for a moment of relief as Keeley helped him lower to the ground to rest. Another prompt burst across the air in front of him. Manslayer. This mantle was given to slayers who have cut through swaths of humans, a heinous crime, but sometimes a much-needed one in the world. Slayers who fed their bloodlust on the flesh of men awakened a dark side of their nature, leaving themselves to be driven to hunt and slay like things possessed. This mantle gives slayers a passive bonus when in combat against humans. Move faster, hit harder, fell humans, and leave some to spread the tales of the manslayers. Notes: take less damage from human characters. Deal increased damage to them. Human kills now result in a higher bloodlust boost. Increased combat perception against humans. Increased movement speed against humans. This needs a gate. There we go. All right. He lay there, unable to properly process the information and what it meant. Are you okay? Keely took his shoulders in her hand, shaking him with care as if to rouse him out of his stupor. Hey, say something, he groaned. Well, that was almost intelligible. Maybe more than normal, she smiled. Devram snorted. I think so. I don't know what just happened. Oh, I think so. I think so. I don't know what just happened. That makes two of us. You went psycho. You should have seen your eyes. They changed color, and I swear the temperature dropped when I looked at them. I felt like I was dipped into ice. She rubbed her shoulders in an unconscious gesture. You looked, I don't know, like you weren't human. It was like you were a monster in human skin. The thought chilled him to his marrow. He turned away from her look. I can't explain it. Something just took me over. It was like I was suffocating, and the only way to breathe was if I killed him. He told her what had happened to his senses. She listened, silently, placing a hand on one of his shoulders, giving it a gentle squeeze when he finished. I've never heard of anything like that while I've been here. I've never heard of anything like that while I've been here. Pursed his lips, wondering how much of what had happened was tied to his restricted class. What do you know about the bloodlust stat? She blinked, tilting her head at an angle to place one of her ears closer to him. Sorry, what? He repeated himself. Keely shook her head. There isn't one. Just the three we all have. She rattled them off. Where do you see that? He brought up his menu, swiping through it until he found a setting. Allowing him to display it publicly. Dev jabbed his index finger at the screen where the stat floated. Max bloodlust. Kill more to keep it filled. Keely stared at the screen, licking her lips. What's that mean? He shook his head, much like she had earlier. Not sure, but I think it might have something to do with that. Dev pointed at the decapitated chaste. I never even thought about it, but killing has been so easy ever since I came here. I know they're computer-generated. He made a dismissive wave of a hand. But they look and feel so real. I thought I'd have some hesitation. I haven't. It's been easy, like a switch has been flipped. And honestly, it freaks me out. It's like all the anger I've had all my life on the station has been sharpened and pointed at whatever's in front of me. Or at the end of this. Devram raised the katana, looking down its point. Trails of sangria ichor ran down the edge. He wiped the weapon clean on his robes in what had become a habit now. Keely wrapped an arm around him. Maybe we should go back? Devram stared past her, turning his gaze to the sky, then back to the ground. I think I'm fine here for the night, if you don't mind. She shook her head. I don't. Keely rolled back, stretching flat before turning onto her side next to him. She reached up, grabbing the fabric over one of his shoulders, tugging him. Devram lowered himself onto his back so he could keep his eyes trained on the sky. Thirst stayed in his right hand, thrumming softer than before, radiating a gentle warmth. Devram stared at the stars, pushing aside the sword, the bloodlust, and taking solace in Keely's presence beside him as his eyes grew heavy. All right, that's chapter 10, guys, and I think that'll be it for our show today. Any other characters that you can think of that we might have missed?
Not during the early parts of the story, no. The rest of the new people that come in of any consequence are near the very end of the novel. And there's one more, and I've already left notes for her.
Cool. All right. Is that in the Hangouts or is that in your...
That's in the main document. It's Mira. She comes in... Ooh, actually, let's Google. Let's see. All right, what chapter is this? Just scroll up. That's chapter 25.
I'm just gonna do a little sample here. I'm not gonna record.
That's fair.
I wanna read a little bit more. Chapter 25. Okay, is that at the beginning or what?
It's a few pages down. Actually, I can control copy, sending you a line that you can just copy paste, and it should just pull it up in the document.
Okay. Yes. Let's. Come on, computer. Why are you acting this way? All right.
Oh, it took me a second to realize what you were watching. Wow.
He's planning to use the lullaby to kill the guildmasters. Why didn't you tell me?
Okay. All right. This one's gonna be easy. All right. So you copy pasted it in here. Okay. Gave her another look.
Yeah, I pasted the a dialogue line that if you put that in the PDF, it should just take you right to where he first meets her.
All right.
I was in the lodge when you spoke, and I wanted to tell you that you're right. I lost someone too when we came into Lorien, and it was because of those things. No one else stood up to help you, but I know some of the other hunters there. They want to. They're just scared, I know. I don't judge them for it. It just means I've got my work cut out for me. I'm here to make that easier. I want to help. I loaded in 2 weeks ago. I've spent that time hunting a lot.
How's that?
I think I like it. I just think hers is a little bit. I don't know if the right word's deeper. Maybe carries a little bit more gravitas.
Okay.
I'm here. I'm here to make that easier. I want to help. I loaded in 2 weeks ago. I've spent that time hunting a lot.
Let's see.
Good. Now let's take care of your clothes before we leave. He needs an upgrade. Some crafting changes and maybe hunter's powder to clean up that outfit. Don't make that pun again. Oh, I'm enjoying it.
More gravitas.
Like there are going to be some frightened goblins pretty soon. Let's collect some heads.
What do you think? Can we do we want to go deeper?
Yeah, with the clip you watched, Urza was the redhead. I don't know how to describe her voice though. I don't want to say it's louder because that's completely inaccurate. Though she was shouting in the clip, but that's not the way she sounds. I wish I was better with audio descriptors. My one weakness.
Let me listen a little more. Maybe just more energy?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Maybe more energy? Okay. I'm going to go back. Start over with this chapter. Wait, did I go past the beginning? No. Oh, here we go. Okay.
I was in the lodge when you spoke, and I wanted to tell you that you're right.
Wow. Yeah, that's definitely hitting a lot. Yeah.
I lost someone too when we came into Lorien, and it was because of those things. No one else stood up to help you, but I know some of the other hunters there. They want to. They're just
scared. I know. I don't judge them for it. It just means I've got my work cut out for me.
I'm here to make that easier. I want to help. I loaded in 2 weeks ago. I've spent that time hunting a lot.
How's that?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I had her voice as. Yeah, I think it was just the energy and confidence because she's supposed to be pretty like reassured of herself.
Cool. Okay. Then she's good, and I guess that's everybody, right?
Yeah, there's a few side characters pop up, but they're not actually important. I'll be honest. Like that's totally up to your discretion. I trust you. They're not reoccurring. They're not main party members. She's the last person who joins really late into the story.
Cool. All right. Well, we're gonna get started. I think I've recorded quite a bit already tonight, but I want to just read a little bit more before I get started recording the rest of this thing. I'm starting tomorrow, so everybody, thank you everybody who came to hang out and watch. If you guys haven't checked it out yet, go to Amazon, pick up The Goblin King by R.R. Virdi. Is it The Goblin King or just Goblin King?
Just Goblin King. I wanted to avoid copyright issues.
Right. So look up Goblin King on Amazon by R.R. Virdi, Virdi, and go pick up the Kindle version if you just absolutely can't wait to check out the audio version. You can get both. Because the audio, as always, as you guys know from Sound Blue Theater, is always a separate experience that if you're a big fan of the Kindle version, then the audio version is just going to be that much more for you. So thanks to Ronnie for coming and hanging out with us, and for giving me direction, and for making this deal with me. By the way, guys, Ronnie and I will be working together some more, at least with his urban fantasy series. Let's see, Grave. Is it Grave?
I have the Grave Report, which is like been nominated for the Dragon Award, and then Dangerous Ways, which is set in the same universe, just spin-off series that's also been nominated for the Dragon Award, and that's at least right now 2 of 8 more series set in that universe that I plan to write. So,
excellent.
Yay. More work cut out for me.
Yeah, and the urban fantasy, I keep thinking of Grave Dealings, but that's book 2, isn't it?
That's book 3. Grave Beginnings is 1. Grave Measures is 2. Grave Dealings is 3. Yeah. Shit, I forgot my own order.
I'm actually gonna screen share here so you guys can see this book. So this book has gotten a lot of attention from other big urban fantasy authors. Isn't that right?
Yeah, Larry Correa gave me a blurb actually last year, and right now I know Jim Butcher has got my stuff. I don't know how much I can talk about with what is going on involving he and I right now, but I know he is a fan of my stuff and likes it. I don't know how much I'm allowed to divest about what's going on between he and I right now, but
well, to have at least his to have his patronage, right? for him to be reading your stuff, that's quite a thing to say. I mean, considering how much urban fantasy is out there, and the fact that he's reading your stuff is pretty telling of what kind of quality we can expect out of this book. So I won't be able to jump on this one right after Goblin King, but I'd say in a couple more months I can start on Grave Beginnings, and I'm really looking forward to it because, I mean, I love LitRPG, guys, but I gotta do other things sometimes, or my brain is gonna explode. And urban fantasy is one of the places that I used to live for a little while before LitRPG. So it'll be really nice to get back into the UF groove. And thank you, Ronnie, for giving me the opportunity to do so. So everybody, we're gonna go ahead and kill. We're gonna go ahead and kill this broadcast, and I'm gonna get on with the rest of the night. Thanks again for showing up, and keep an eye on the Facebook, on the SBTL, the Sound Booth Theater Live Facebook page for more Sound Booth Theater Live schedulings. I believe this Sunday I'm doing a requests only, and then also right after that, I'm gonna be doing a. Okay, now I don't think he's named it yet, but Charles Dean and me and Blaze Corvin and Dakota Kraut will be playing a drunken game of fate this Sunday after Sound Booth Theater Live. So definitely stick around for that. It'll be on Charles Dean's YouTube channel. If you haven't yet, go subscribe to that. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, go do that. And yeah, that's all the marketing I have to do. Peace out, y'all, and thank you.